Good afternoon. My name is Lode de Wolf. I'm not on the program and I represent most of your customers, which means I'm elderly, taking a lot of drugs. I'm part of the 80% of physicians that don't do TikTok, don't do Instagram, and don't like to see too many reps. So I'm your customer. And I'm today here, I'm honored, and thank you, Dario, for inviting us. And by the way, big compliment to yourself, because if I was going to recruit anybody at this conference, I would only look into people that are still in this room at this time. Anybody else, forget about it. So I'm very honored to be with John. John is also a physician, and he is very happy moving to the industry, but he's kept on doing what he did before, which means he's here on 3 hours of sleep. As we were talking, they have too much work. Thank you, John, for making it. I know it was tough for you. John, when I saw your title, Raising the Bar in Medical Affairs, I was like, oh, this guy's going to write my book, because I spent 30 years in medical affairs. Or maybe he's just taking the disperative cry of the CEO, when can I raise the bar of medical affairs? So you must have had something in mind. What was it?
I did. When I think about raising the bar, the first thing that comes to mind is things like being aspirational, being ambitious for our patients, for our stakeholders, our healthcare professionals, but also for our organization. And for me, raising the bar, there are two sort of things that we need to think about. It's raising the bar internally within the organization, but also externally with our stakeholders. If we look at internally, there are key things that medical can do. One of the things we've heard about all day is insights. I believe medical is a rich source of insights. They're having these conversations that no other function within the organization is able to have. They're able to have these in-depth discussions, and they can generate data and insights back to the organization that positions them as a true strategic partner within the organization. I think it's also important to think about medical being an enabler to all this great digital transformation that we've been hearing about. Medical can sometimes get a bad reputation as being that big dinosaur or ogre that just says no. But I think it's important to think about how do we enable our colleagues, how do we enable this transformation, these exciting projects, these exciting initiatives that at the end of the day are there to improve the quality of life for our patients, for our healthcare professionals, for our stakeholders. And as a sort of a link to that, I think it's important for medical to start embracing things like omnichannel, because for me, true omnichannel is not omnichannel without medical being part of this. And it's important to start thinking about how does medical fit into this, into the user flow, and to collaborate, co-design, co-create with our colleagues in other parts of the organization to ensure that that's true. And I really believe that the pandemic has given medical a really great platform to truly raise the bar within these things. When we talk about externally, I want to talk about how do we ensure that we're getting the right information to the right HCP at the right time, using the right content or channels, and by that I mean medical precision engagement, which links into the omnichannel piece that I mentioned earlier.
Wow, okay, that was a lot of information. You sound like an MSL. So if I summarize this, thank you, Emma, for saying that. If you summarize this, what you're saying is the bar needs to be raised both internally, and yes, I have the scars on my back to show that medical was the ogre. I love that. Not green, but yeah, I love that. But also externally, right? And so you gave a few hints. So what, in your opinion, is the single most important thing that you could do as a leader in medical affairs to raise that bar internally? You talked about insights, and also externally, or is it the same? Could you go a little bit deeper?
I think it's important to get the basics right in order to achieve what I've just talked about. And for me, the red thread or the key foundation is insights. As I said, medical brings a lot of insights. They're a rich source of data for the organization. And it's important to ensure that we're communicating those insights to the right people within the organization in an effective way. Those insights may not be actionable by medical. They may be actionable by other areas of the organization, such as commercial, R&D. We may have insights that will influence clinical trial protocols or our clinical development program. So it's important that we have an end-to-end process, a robust process from data acquisition, and that's from MSL call notes, ad boards, medical information queries, ISS submissions, investigator-sponsored study submissions, social listening. It's important to look at all of this in parallel to ensure that we're looking at the bigger picture, and that will help us develop more insightful insights, or more important, more effective insights that we can then communicate to the organization. But it's also important we close that loop. We bring those insights back to the people who've contributed to those insights to say, we've listened to you because you've told us this. This is what we're going to now be doing. And that accountability on the people who are generating those, helping us generate those insights, will also help them contribute better quality data, i.e. our MSLs. We heard earlier about training them about what an insight is and how to best share that information with us. But also externally, when we have ad boards, it's important to go back to our KOLs or our HCPs and say to them, because you've told us this is now what we're going to be doing. And that, I think, also helps build that trust between pharma, between medical, and our external stakeholders.
So you really see insights as the fuel, right? Internally, capturing them, sharing them with departments better than was done before. I would say first sharing them within medical affairs, because that sometimes is an issue. And then using those insights to create the trust with the HCP. Now, so far, you've only talked about HCP, right? Doctors, prescribers, the ones that medical affairs has visited for 2 decades or 3 decades. So what about beyond that? Because a recent little survey that I did shows that in more than 60% of pharma companies, if there is a function dealing with patient engagement, it's actually finding home within the bigger medical affairs umbrella. So what you've said so far, this insights gathering, insight sharing, and giving back insights to create trust, could you extend that also to the patient? How does it extend to the patient?
Absolutely. So, in the company where I'm working, patient engagement is very important. It's very key to the area that we're in. We learn a lot from our engagements with patients. And what I mentioned earlier about that framework of gathering insights from different sources, patient engagements provide a lot of rich insights. Mm-hmm. Actually, I shouldn't say insights. They provide data, and when we combine that data, we then generate those insights that can then be shared with the rest of the organization. So absolutely, this is something we're actively looking into, and there is a dedicated patient affairs function where I am, which sits within medical. And again, it's important to have that collaboration between cross-functionally, so that we're not working in silos anymore. It's important to start sharing that data, whether it's medical, whether it's patient affairs, whether it's commercial. How do we ensure that we're making the use of the data that we hold as an organization in order to optimize how we are then showing up with our healthcare professionals, with our stakeholders? All right.
So I take it, and I agree, because I think in the past we've made too many differences between the patient and the medical sometimes, and I was also part of that. Now, one thing that medical affairs has been accused of in the past is it's the wining and dining facility for top key opinion leaders, leading to a little bit estranged from the doctor that the rep sees every day, the one who actually sits in the trenches with the 16 hours of paperwork per week. And that brings me to the question that I have for you around diversity. We have not, and I speak we as medical affairs, we've not been very good in the past in getting those insights from a diverse group of doctors. It was always the top 20 KOLs worldwide in a specialty who were going from ad board to ad board, from satellite meeting to meeting and all that. So how do we increase the diversity?
So one of the key things that is important amongst that framework or the mix of data that we're getting is social listening. We know that a lot of healthcare professionals are talking on social media, especially around Congress. That's a rich source of information about how people are feeling about the data, what the unmet educational need is, their perception, the first-hand sort of perception when they see that data. And that's really rich information that we can do a lot with in pharma, in medicals especially. So it's important to bring those in as an extra piece of data that helps to support that insight building. People earlier talked about digital opinion leaders. This is something that we're also looking into to see how we can start collaborating, co-creating, co-designing with digital opinion leaders? How can we start engaging with a wider range of healthcare professionals? And this is really one of the basic principles of medical precision engagement. It's not about medical just talking to the external experts or the medical audience, which is quite narrow. How do we widen that medical information or access to medical information to other healthcare professionals, generate insights onto how to best communicate our science to them, and get that data or that information out there to them in the best way possible.
Can we make a real example? For example, medical information is by many companies seen as, well, it is a legal responsibility. It also falls out of promotion because the customer calls with a question. But at the same time, it's treated like we must do it and it's put in a corner. Yet, it can be a source of insight.
Absolutely.
Can you give an example of how do you bring the insights from a medical information, you've got people answering the phone on behalf of your company, to the only customer who actually seeks to talk to you? Everybody else, it's the other way around. How do you bring that in? How do you actually do it?
So having an idea of what questions are being asked, that itself is a key piece of data for us, because we know that clearly there may be, we may think we're providing the information that people need to know about, but actually a group of healthcare professionals or even patients may be asking things where the information is just not available. So that itself gives us some idea of what are the areas that we need to focus on, to invest in, to create material for. But I think, another thing that was mentioned earlier was something like next best action. Next best action can be a real useful tool for medical affairs, and there are some really useful use cases that can be implemented. One of which is, alerting the MSL about a medical information query, for example, that's been made, and then getting the MSL to respond to the HCP directly, build that relationship, and provide that data that the HCP is not able to get readily or easily.
All right, fantastic. So quickly summarize, and then we go into a hot point which we hadn't planned about. I told you I would surprise you. Raising the bar internally, externally, focus on getting those insights, sharing them, being very diverse, include the patients, go beyond the hotel-based KOLs. All right, very clear and very actionable. Now, one thing that came up today, and I want to talk to you about that, is with this content explosion, right, especially the modular one, medical is at risk of being even more the hurdle of the approval process, right? So all these beautiful people here are going to make more and more content, but it still has to go to these 3 people reviewing it. And there's already a fair degree of frustration within companies, which actually is a chronic issue.
Really?
How should we solve that issue? Because the funnel is being filled, but the funnel hole is not bigger.
So I think it goes back to the point I mentioned earlier about medical being an enabler. So it's important for medical to work on a solution with our commercial colleagues. Medical shouldn't be left as the other ones who are just going to sign it off. They're just approvers. Medical should be part of that journey right from the beginning, to understand about modular content, understand the value proposition of modular content. It's not about making medical aware or increasing their knowledge, because as with anything new, as with any change, people are usually scared or afraid, or it's something that challenges the status quo, people are not comfortable with. So it's about,
especially medical people.
Absolutely, absolutely. And medical, at the end of the day, in some countries, and a lot of countries, medical has to have that final sort of day or signature, yes. And it's their accountability at the end of the day. But it's important that medical, as I said, is brought onto that journey right from the beginning, when we're already thinking about that content, that modular content, bring medical in, explain to them what how it's going to work, what the value of this is going to bring, what the value to the customer is, what the value internally is going to be. It has to be a collaboration. It can't just be left for medical to just sign something off at the end, because that's where you get the bottleneck. Things come to medical at the end, and they've never been part of the process. They haven't seen it. Lots of questions come up. So to mitigate this, bring them early. They should be part of that change management that's happening within the organization.
I couldn't agree more. So the tip here is those who are providers and developers of solution, invite the medical colleagues, John's team, from the moment there's an ID. It's a little bit like not inviting statisticians when you write a protocol. That's at your peril. You need to bring the compliance people in. First of all, find their office. Many marketeers don't know where the office is of the approval people. That's a good start. And then buy them coffee, and you will see how the world changes. John, parting message.
Just to add, I don't want medical to be seen as the compliance person. Medical
No.
should also be seen as an equal partner to help that co-design because of the insights that they're bringing, the experience that they're bringing. But I think also medical can start to be, once they understand it, once they're more comfortable with it, medical can start being a bit more pragmatic in the approach to help make things a bit more efficient. But I think it's, it all starts with bringing medical right from the beginning.
Totally agree. So parting word, because our time is up, is that you're going away, or do you want to give one thing that they can start doing, not tomorrow, because tomorrow's day 2, but the day after? What should it be?
I think as with any digital transformation, as with any new thing, start small, build, and then build, scale out. Important to show that value proposition, but you're not going to be able to do that unless you do a small pilot or a small, minimal viable product. Do it. Don't be afraid to fail. It's important to learn from mistakes, and that will really help set a strategy and really bring medical affairs to the forefront of that digital transformation that we all want to be doing.
John, thank you so much. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Okay, I think we're done. It looks like we can't do questions. I look at Dario. So, anybody have a question? Please find John.
Thanks, everyone.